have a unique opportunity to strategize on fundraising tactics and to leverage the best ones, implement them in the digital space. So everything from user experiences for donors and email marketing to digital paid advertising and lead generation. Such a necessity for fundraising in the nonprofit sector to be able to draw that support and channel funds into the work that we do. I really think that fundraising is the backbone of any successful nonprofit. So I've realized that programming is not the only way to effectuate change, and fundraising and communications are also equally as essential in order to have impact. A good example of the success of our policy work and advocacy work is the anti-child marriage law that was signed in the Philippines in December 2022. So that was thanks to advocacy work undertaken by Oxfam and its partners. So really speaks to the ability to leverage technology in order to, like I said, rally audiences that support from across the globe. The charitable sector is considered highly competitive, but at the end of the day, we're all doing good in the world, right? So I think it's so important for us to be able to share tools, tech, best practices across like-minded organizations, because we have this collective responsibility to do good in the world.
So tell us who you are and what organisation you are with today.
I would love to. First off, thanks for having me. My name is Attiya Hirji. I am a Canadian currently based in Nairobi, Kenya, and I work as the Digital Fundraising Specialist at Oxfam International. So essentially my role is to advise on digital fundraising best practice and to support the 22 Oxfam offices and teams across the globe. So I really have a unique opportunity to strategize on fundraising tactics and to leverage the best ones, implement them in the digital space. So everything from user experiences for donors and email marketing to digital paid advertising and lead generation. And to share a little bit about Oxfam, the organization I work for, our ambition really comes down to one thing, and that's lasting impact. And we do this by tackling the root causes of poverty and issues like inequality, land rights, climate change, and discrimination against women and girls. So we're currently working in about 87 countries with a number of partners, over 4,000, I would say, partners, allies, grassroots organizations, and we're supporting communities to build better lives for themselves, grow their resilience, and to protect lives and livelihoods in times of crisis.
Oh my gosh, wow. There's some really impressive stats there. But first, tell me, how long have you been in Kenya? As a Canadian in Kenya, when did you move? How are you finding that?
I am a recent transplant. I relocated just a couple of months ago. I have been with Oxfam in various capacities for the last 5 years, formerly in Canada, and now in Nairobi, Kenya, which is the head office of Oxfam International.
That's amazing. What an opportunity to move country and experience Kenya. So how on earth did you end up at Oxfam? Talk to us a little bit about your journey, the journey that you've been on to get to where you are today.
For sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. So From a really young age, I knew that I wanted to work in the social sector. I wanted to tackle some of the biggest development issues faced by people around the world. And when I was young, I used to do a lot of fundraisers. So whether that was a walk or a run to raise funds for organizations, bake sales, lemonade stands, you name it, I always wanted to do good in the world. So I went to school to study international development. I really wanted to work for an organization that I knew would have long-term impact globally. And at that time, in my mind, I really thought in order to have the most impact, you needed to work on the programs team. So be at the forefront of delivering programs like in areas of education, clean water, sanitation, hygiene, that sort of thing. So you can imagine it came as a bit of a surprise when I found myself in a public fundraising role after graduating. So I was really lucky to be afforded that opportunity. And since then, I've just been working with various international agencies in fundraising and comms. And I really like these areas because I think it gives me the opportunity to mix both my creative side, but also the data and behavioral analytics side of things. So it's a really nice kind of marriage of both of those. And other than the initial step of falling into fundraising, I would say that my path in this sector and in this career has been quite linear, actually. It's funny because that's not usually the case for the vast majority of fundraisers that I know or those in the nonprofit sector, but I think there's just such a necessity for fundraising in the nonprofit sector to be able to draw that support and channel funds into the work that we do. I really think that fundraising is the backbone of any successful nonprofit. So I've realized that programming is not the only way to effectuate change, and fundraising and communications are also equally as essential in order to have impact.
It's awesome to hear that point of view because you're right. There is, I think, a perception that the impact is more on the program side, but actually, fundraising and comms are equally, if not more important, right? That's driving everything because without that, you're not going to have the income, the revenue to be able to have that positive impact that you want to have as an organization. So it's hugely, hugely important. I'm just like, it's funny how, and for those listening at home, we'd had a conversation pre-starting the podcast that actually quite a lot of the guests on Igniting Change hadn't been down a linear path, but it's amazing that you have, and you obviously still love the role that you're in, and it's amazing that you're being offered these opportunities that you can move countries. How long have you been at Oxfam? 5 years or
Yeah,
longer?
5 years now at Oxfam. Previously, I have done some work with the Red Cross, the Aga Khan Foundation. I worked in higher education fundraising in Central Asia. So I've had many opportunities to get to work in various organizations in the fundraising space. But my work with Oxfam and my recent move to Nairobi, I think, has been quite unique and has, really speaks to the global reach of Oxfam's work across the globe.
And do you know how long you're going to be there? I don't know how it works when you get relocated, or get an opportunity like this.
Well, as long as I'm effectuating change in the digital fundraising space, I would like to think that I get to keep my job and stay in Nairobi. So far, it's been fantastic, and I don't plan on relocating again anytime soon.
Which is amazing, absolutely amazing. Okay, so tech for good. The reason Igniting Change exists. Talk to us about an example of tech for good that you have been involved with that you'd like to share today.
Great. That's a loaded question. I've got lots of examples. It's a question of where do I even begin? So I can definitely speak to how we leverage technology in Oxfam's fundraising efforts, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't first mention some of the really great initiatives in Oxfam's advocacy and programming work. So the caveat there is that I'm not the expert by any means. We can delve deeper into fundraising. But the first example is around advocacy and the use of digital mobilization by way of online petitions to influence policy decisions. And Oxfam really uses this to rally audiences to really support our position on various issues. So a good example of the success of our policy work and advocacy work is the anti-child marriage law that was signed in the Philippines in December 2022. So that was thanks to advocacy work undertaken by Oxfam and its partners. So really speaks to the ability to leverage technology in order to, like I said, rally audiences that support from across the globe. And then on the programming side of things, one really neat use of technology that I have recently heard about is our work in Egypt and in Jordan. So we've been using digital solutions to foster youth employment. So providing tools and tech that aims to enhance economic opportunities and create partnerships through e-learning, digital job matching, coaching and mentoring, and then also just providing youth access to jobs, career counseling, internships, that sort of thing. So again, a really good use of technology for good.
It is really, really good. And just on that, and I know this is the programming side, but do you have your own? Is that a platform that Oxfam have designed and built, or are you leaning on third parties to help you kind of get there quicker? Like, do you have any more information around that? And don't worry if you don't. I'm just curious.
I don't know off the top of my head, but my instinct is telling me that the partners that we do work with obviously are grassroots organizations that understand the context of the country we're working in, but also tech and digital partners, again, that understand the market and are able to then support us in programming efforts.
It's awesome. And it reminds me very much so of some work that UNHCR are doing around, I think it's, and I know this because they are one of our clients. I should, this is why I know. Their Connecting Worlds app, where we as a global team are connecting refugees with mentors to help them with work opportunities when they get to where they get to. And it's a lovely example of how people are leveraging tech to be able to scale giving help to those that need it. And it is that information, it's key information at the time when you need it most. But I do find definitely those trying to reach that younger generation, youth employment seems to be a thing very much so globally. And I think technology can definitely help scale, but also kind of get to that audience, because the audience tends to be very digital literate. Like, they've grown up with phones or devices of some sort, and they just always reach out to their devices. Obviously, it does vary massively by country, but typically the youth, if you're going to engage with them, I think sometimes 90% of the time there's going to need to be a phone or a device of some sort involved, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're using tech on one side to engage donors and bring in revenue to support our programming, but on the opposite side, we can also use tech for good to implement programming. And you're talking about economic opportunities, and that's a really key area that Oxfam works in, is in economic empowerment, and that just unlocks so much potential. And it's great to hear that the sector is innovating and developing these tools and these apps. And, the charitable sector is considered highly competitive. But at the end of the day, we're all doing good in the world, right? So I think it's so important for us to be able to share tools, tech, best practices across like-minded organizations, because we have this collective responsibility to do good in the world.
I, I totally agree. And do you know what? It's really interesting that you use the word competitive. And I think I say that because just coming from the background I have, I look at the not-for-profit sector and I see it as being a very collaborative but also transparent sector. Like everyone is happy to share learnings and insights, what's worked, what hasn't. And I find that so refreshing because you do not get, or certainly in my experience, you don't get that in other sectors. So I think that is something that is really amazing in the not-for-profit sector. And please correct me if I'm wrong, if you're like, no, that does not happen.
No, you're spot on. That's something I really love about the nonprofit sector. Even for me, I connect with my colleagues at Amnesty and Greenpeace and SOS and UNICEF on a monthly basis, really, to just talk about what the sector looks like, what trends we're seeing, how we can reach more people and effectuate more change. So I really appreciate that collaboration. The competitive nature comes, I think, in the digital space when we're trying to target audiences and obviously meet our financial targets. But like I said, I hate to say that it's highly competitive in that market because at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve the same goals.
Yeah, but it's a really good point, and it is a really good point. I didn't think about it like that when you are competing for donor dollars at the end of the day, even though you're all trying to have a positive impact, you're all trying to have that thing, but it's definitely a perspective that we probably need to be more aware of, and it forces you, I guess, to work harder, maybe work smarter, not harder. And I guess it's hard because certainly I've noticed more of a trend over the past 2 years of organizations cropping up trying to do more good, which is brilliant. Like, we want this, but maybe there's a need for more collaboration so that people, you're not, I don't know, I can't think of the right phrase, but you're not, it's like cannibalizing each other's like income streams, so that it's inhibiting you guys from having the best possible impact you can have.
Exactly. Yeah. In a saturated market, that's the ideal. So everyone heard it here first. Puff and I are saying henceforth.
So talk to me about today and the environment that you're operating in today. I feel like I'm going off topic slightly there, but because I know I'm finding it really challenging. The external factors in the marketplace are hard. It feels like there's a lot of doom and gloom. Everything's going up in costs. People have less disposable income. Like, how is that affecting you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think technology is really an essential part of any nonprofit success. And in order to remain relevant, we really need to embrace technology and the digital space, like I said, to remain relevant in today's world. So my advice and my approach is to innovate and fail where you can. I think there's still a demand for traditional fundraising. I think you might be shocked to learn the number of people that still really love receiving direct mail packs and like selecting which program they'd like to support, writing their check, mailing the envelope back to the organization's office. But at the same time, I also know that we need to keep up with trends, stay relevant, and really meet donors where they're at, technologically speaking. So, the example that comes to my mind is offering multiple ways to give. In the for-profit sector, it's a no-brainer that any purchase you make, you're able to give through Google Pay, Apple Pay, crypto, Venmo, the list goes on. And so the nonprofit sector really needs to catch up and meet these donors where they're at. And technology is that vehicle to be able to do so.
It's so true, so true. Just last week, I was chatting with Jamil from Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, and he was talking about a pilot they had been running with Venmo. And I'm not naming and shaming. He articulated it way better than I'm going to right now. But he was talking about some of the challenges that they had working with Venmo because they hadn't worked with them before, and Venmo, I don't think, understood how quickly their campaign was going to scale. So they weren't perhaps prepared. So it did cause some friction, some issues that they had to resolve, and they did resolve them, and it came out with a positive outcome. But it is really interesting how people might be quick to say, well, the not-for-profit sector, they need to catch up, they need to do this. But when you do, and you do take that risk, and you're investing in this, in this new tech, I say new tech, but in this technology that's going to enable you to do more things, sometimes it's not as plain sailing as one would hope. Like, there are going to be challenges. And when you said, it's okay to fail, right? And sometimes you've got to learn from those and move on and kind of keep moving forwards. And I think that's a really good point to make, because I think something that I've definitely noticed over the years is maybe there's a culture in the not-for-profit sector of being scared to fail. And, why change something if it's not broken? Like, it still works. It may not work as well as it once did, but it still works. But I think you want people, like, I'm an advocate of taking more risks, calculated risks for sure. You don't want to do anything too crazy, but you've got to try new things to be able to see what's going to work and what doesn't. And it's really exciting to hear you say that and talk about that.
Exactly. So, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's exactly what I advise our Oxfam teams across the globe, is really to test in the digital space. It's so important. One interesting thing to me, one really cool tool that has surprised me is gamification. So adding an animation or a flourish even to the monthly giving option on a donation page, if you can believe it, sees far better conversion. I would probably have to get into the behavioral analytics around it. I'm not sure why having a little heart animation or emoji next to that giving option has such a powerful impact. But that's just an example of things that you can test in the fundraising space, in the digital fundraising space, and can have those returns you're looking for.
It's such a good point, and it's such a simple point, and it's a brilliant point, I should say, because definitely when you're thinking about user experience, just going through, and a lot of these people, they're pretty used to filling in forms or giving out information. So when you surprise and delight people with new or quirky or fun or engaging, whether it's an animation, like whatever it is, it's just something that delights a user. It can make a massive, massive difference. And it's really interesting hearing you talk about that. Even just like the use of an emoji or a picture or a slight animation. It's awesome that you've just shared that.
Exactly. It blows my mind in the best way how that can have such an impact. Another tool that comes to mind is heat mapping, which kind of takes things beyond the numbers. As fundraisers, we're looking at the click-through rate a lot. We're looking at cost per acquisition, but heat maps show you where the users on your website are moving, clicking, scrolling, and that allows you to remove any user experience friction and optimize that experience. So I think that that's also a really unique tool that you can use in your testing.
And I think it's so important to flag, and for anyone listening, if you haven't used it, it's worth just a little test just to see what other insights it can offer you. Because you're right, people get so focused on the click-through numbers, they're forgetting the bigger picture and understanding, well, what else are they taking in or looking at, or where is their attention going? And I think, yeah, it's a brilliant point. Really good point. So when just talk to me a little bit more about that heat mapping. So have you been using this for a while, or is this something that's fairly new to you?
We've been using it for quite a while across the Oxfam fundraising teams. And the interesting thing, though, with my work in particular, supporting teams across the globe, is that one kind of tried and true strategy that works in a particular market might not in the other. So if you're even thinking about leveraging a channel like TikTok, we have some countries where we're seeing really great engagement, really great conversion, and other countries where TikTok is just not relevant. So it's a challenge in the role that I'm in to be able to understand the context, the market, the makeup of the audience, how well known the organization is in that country. So many different factors that play into our digital fundraising activities and efforts in that country.
It's amazing that you get to oversee it globally almost, because I guess it is so different in the different country, in the different markets that you're operating in. And we see it in the work that we do in terms of, you mentioned gamification earlier. Well, there are gamification elements that work really well in some countries, but just don't translate in others. And there could be lots of different reasons for that. That could be down to one example I use is digital literacy, right? And the best example I can give for that, and I'm not going to take credit for this. This was someone else that told me, and it's not technically gamification, but like a simple feature on a phone that I'm pretty used to using, pinch to zoom, right? When I want to zoom in on a map. To me, that's pretty intuitive, but I've been using phones and apps for a very long time. I would expect that functionality on a map. Whereas for some people in some countries, that's not intuitive. That's just not a thing. And you cannot roll out functionality or campaigns or anything just assuming that these markets all have the same digital literacy or understanding or whatever, because it just won't translate how you think it will.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good example of cross-cultural context, right?
Yeah. So tell us, are there any other examples of tech for good you want to shine a light on that maybe have inspired you?
I would love to, Puff, if we can maybe talk about some of the fundraising technology that we use at Oxfam. We spoke so much about our advocacy and our programming work, but let's get into something that I'm a little more familiar with maybe. So, we all recognize that the pandemic accelerated the need for digital transformation really throughout the economy. And I think that the nonprofit sector was not immune to this nearly overnight need to pivot. So I have 3 examples actually across Oxfam offices of how we were able to pivot previously kind of in-person programming or work. So one of Oxfam's biggest in-person events is Trail Walker. So the idea is that teams of 4, they get sponsored by family, friends, companies to trek 100 kilometers over a weekend. So in the pandemic, we obviously had to shift this to a virtual event. So Oxfam Hong Kong actually did a really incredible job of doing that. So they were able to leverage technology to still make this an engaging event, very collaborative competition, and also enabled us to fundraise in the digital space. So there was a lot of tremendous growth and participation seen in this virtual space. even from people that historically may not have participated in the in-person trail walker. So some of those things were app tracking, so we were able to measure progress of the teams in the trek. Family and friends were able to follow along and cheer on teams at a distance. We were able to issue virtual certificates at the end of the event. So it was really great to be able to interact with people more in the digital world. And like I said, just we saw tremendous growth from that pivot.
And just on that, and I know it sounds like a small piece, but when you were talking about those virtual certificates, the digital certificates, so having done the work with the American Red Cross and the badges and stuff where people can achieve badges, do not underestimate the importance of certificates and badges to reward people, because they love it. That's definitely a key thing.
I know, swag is out and digital validation is in. I love it. It's fantastic. So we've definitely capitalized on that.
I'm going to quote you on that. I like that. Swag is out. Digital validation is in. That's epic. I'm definitely going to borrow that quote.
By all means, you can take it. Some other quick examples. In Europe, our audiences there will know that Oxfam is known for their brick and mortar secondhand shops. They're really across all of Europe. So again, during the pandemic, these shops closed, and our Oxfam team in the UK had to pivot to an e-commerce shop. So again, we've been able to now reach audiences and markets that may not have been able to visit in person before. We're able to offer more selection. The user experience is fantastic because people can do it from the comfort of their home. So again, something that's been such a staple for Oxfam in person for a number of years, but has been able to pivot through the use of technology and has seen that return.
And to be honest, there would have been a lot of organisations that it's almost forced upon, right? Because COVID and, like when people can't go into these venues, like how do you think quickly? How do you pivot and try and use technology to be able to get there? So hats off to you guys for doing that so quickly and being able to get that off the ground. Are you seeing that being more popular than the actual physical shops now? Like how has that impacted it longer term? And you may not know the answer. Sorry, I feel naughty for asking that question.
All good. I mean, I know of all these examples because these are the teams that I support, but not necessarily the details of them. All credit goes to those teams, but definitely we've seen growth, and obviously the e-commerce shop continues to exist, continues to grow. It hasn't taken away per se from our brick and mortar shops, but it's just really nice to offer both of those options in an increasingly hybrid world.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned there were 3. What's
I
the third
did.
one?
Good memory after all of this discussion. So the third one is Oxfam Italy, and they're using a virtual or digital wallet. So that like a digital wallet that you would have on your phone. So it offers Oxfam Italy supporters the ability to have a donor card in their wallet. So you might have a membership card to a particular retailer. You might have your blood donor card in this virtual wallet. You'll also have your Oxfam kind of membership or donor card in there. And so we are able to use this tool to be able to send push notifications when there's an emergency happening somewhere in the world and we're looking for donations. It allows our donor to take a look at the gifts that they've made throughout the year. We're able to connect with our supporters in a very different way from email and SMS and social media. So that's something that we just launched in Italy and are loving so far. So another really cool tool.
I'm No, you can't stop there. I need more information. Like, I haven't heard of that before. Like, that's super exciting.
It's great. I think we're one of the first few nonprofits that have trialed this. And again, in a increasingly saturated market or space, digital fundraising is always looking for kind of the next way to reach our supporters and continue to engage them after that donation has been made. So being able to access information on your Oxfam profile from this digital wallet on your phone is super handy and is a really good example of what I shared about meeting the donor where they're at, meeting the supporter where they're at.
It's genius. Absolute genius. Like, I love this. After this, I'm going to go away and start researching this and seeing. So obviously it's just launched. I'm guessing that we don't have that much information in terms of what the measure of success is and how it's embedding. But my assumption would be that obviously if this works in Italy, it might be something that you want to test in other markets that would maybe be recipient to some like a similar concept.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. That's the beauty of having a global organization and us coming together frequently to collaborate and share, is that something that works in one market can be shared and tested in another market. So I hope that we can roll this out in other countries, and hopefully it comes to you as well, Puff. But it's we're definitely we're moving away from people calling the Oxfam office to ask how many donations they've made, where they're at in their donor status, when their tax receipt or tax credit is coming through. And it's just fantastic to be able to have that at their fingertips.
Oh my gosh, I feel like this is going to be gold dust for the sector. Anyone listening at home,
there we go.
Gosh,
we're sharing today. We're not gatekeeping at all.
It's brilliant, and I guess this is like I said earlier, this is what's so brilliant in the sector, that people are open to sharing experiences, insights, learnings, and I find it so refreshing. But to hear you talking about these examples from the different territories, from the different countries, is wonderful and hugely inspiring. Like that digital wallet, and I know I feel like I'm being very focused on that particular example, but it's because genuinely I haven't heard of anyone doing that in this space. It's very awesome. So why Italy? Why was Italy the test market for that, out of interest? Do you know, or it just
the stars aligned in Italy? I think they were just ready to try something new. The provider was really keen on testing in a market that size. They had space kind of in their annual plan to try something like this, and they've got a really great and committed donor base that I think was looking for a tool like this that could meet some of their needs. And no doubt donors from across the globe are really looking for something like this. So we'll have to report back on how that does.
Absolutely. I will definitely be circling back to see how that's performed, because I'm curious, but you're right. You going back to your point of meeting the donors where they are. This is technology that, like, some of your donors will be very au fait with. They'll know how to use. They'll be using their digital wallet anyway. But to encourage them to go in and look at their Oxfam donor card, like, that's brilliant. Why hasn't it been done sooner? Now, like, it sounds so simple, but it's just
exactly. And it's fantastic because you feel a part of something bigger than yourself too, right? You've got this donor card, this kind of Oxfam membership card, if you will, and it just brings everybody together to show that there's collective movement for good happening in the world.
Amazing. Oh my gosh, so many great examples across, advocacy, programming, fundraising. It's brilliant. It's very refreshing. So what about any other examples of tech for good that maybe don't come from your organisation, that may have inspired you, or you just want to shine a light on? Are there any others to mention?
I would love to. And again, Puff, I've got so many examples. So I feel like you'll get excited and have lots of questions. So I've got two programming ones and two fundraising specific examples.
Let's go programming first, and then we'll end with the fundraising. I
Sounds
like
great.
that.
Okay, so the programming one is from Greenpeace. So they used GPS technology in a campaign called Great Whale Trail. So they partnered with scientists to create a live feed tracking of whales that were migrating south. So they were able to gather data that was obviously very helpful for scientists, like the whales' movements, their habitat use, their population structure, but simultaneously it allowed their supporters to monitor individual whales on the website. So that was a really fantastic example that I've seen.
And it's a lovely way to engage the audience so they feel really connected. And I personally like that example. It's a wonderful way that people are using data for good. And data is a very interesting one, and it's very topical. Everyone is talking about data, and sometimes I worry it's death by data. It's like, what data do you use and why? Like, what should you be tracking? But using data in this way to visualize and to really engage supporters with a campaign is wonderful. I haven't heard of this particular one from Greenpeace. I had heard, I can't remember the name of the organisation. They're based in the US, and they monitor the migration of birds. And they did something similar, but they didn't do that the final piece in terms of allowing the donors to track, or supporters to track, individual birds, but tracking individual whales is brilliant.
Exactly.
So they went that final piece.
It's a unique offering, right? And people, like you said, really want to feel connected to the cause, and that just adds a touch of personalization. And along similar lines, Charity Water has sensors that are collecting data on their water projects. So they can take a look at fluctuations in productivity. So if there's a decrease in water flow or the flow stops altogether, they're able to deploy a technician immediately to make repairs. So I think that is beneficial from the operation of the organization, but also just, fantastic best practice. And I'm not sure if they report back to donors and supporters, but in any case, using technology to just make so much progress in their work.
But just on that, and I know it never sounds as sexy, does it, when you're helping with the operation of an organization or a business, but actually fundamentally really important, because the efficiencies being made there, it's a really smart way of using technology to get the right data at the right time, so that then you can action something immediately rather than having it be out of action and cause a much bigger, longer term impact,
exactly.
Right?
And Charity Water has, a lot of, Charity Water is working in a number of countries simultaneously. And so, like you're saying, from a capacity perspective to efficiency perspective, it's, just a really great solution.
Brilliant. Okay, so they're the two programming examples. What about the two fundraising
now
examples?
For the fundraising technology for good. So there's a New York-based animal rescue shelter that used the idea of the Tinder dating app as a way to match dogs with potential owners. So essentially, each dog has a Tinder profile. People can match with them. If they swipe right, they get a message with information on how to adopt the dog. If they don't make that connection, then they're still encouraged to donate, or they can foster or volunteer to walk the dogs. But I just love that they've taken the dating app concept and used it in a very smart way to support the work of their nonprofit.
Really, really smart. Like, it's so simple. Ultimately, it comes down to technology that already exists, this matching concept. It's a concept that people understand. A lot of people are familiar with the dating aspect of the matching. Oh, dating's probably the wrong term, but you know what I mean, the matching aspect. And I think that's wonderful. wonderful. It's a great example. I haven't heard of this example. Again, going to be looking that up. But it's a great way of engaging with your audience and going to where your supporters are. Like they're used to using technology that way and engaging with concepts like
Exactly.
that. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's
Great
very timely,
example.
very relevant. I loved it. And my second one on digital fundraising, and I'm going to pronounce this organization wrong, Miser Aor, Miser Aor, in Germany. It's a development cooperation. So what they did was they used digital ad screens that are interactive to raise awareness about their organization and also to fundraise. So they ask people to swipe their credit card within the actual digital screen. So you'll see a loaf of bread, for example, and you'll take your credit card and you'll slice through the loaf of bread and then see the hand of somebody coming to take the slice that you just cut off. Or they've got an image of two hands that are chained together. And when you, again, swipe your credit card through that binding, then you see the two wrists kind of being freed from the binding. So I thought this was super unique, a great way to generate small donations. I think it was €2 that you were contributing, so very low barrier of entry, and just a phenomenal way to raise awareness about the organization. And it just really like pulls at the heartstrings. It's so tangible.
It's a very unique example of how you've got the creative aspect wrapped up in the tech aspect as well. So I haven't heard of anyone swiping a digital ad screen, but encompassing that with the image and the creative aspect is genius, absolute
I
genius.
thought so too. I would love to see it in person, but I can imagine that it just really captures people. Super unique.
Yeah. And there'll definitely be a novelty element of I've not seen this before. I just want to swipe to see
Right.
what happens. It's €2. It's like you say, a low barrier to entry. I'm going to do it because I want to see what happens. And then it's like that immediate feedback of, oh, I've had that impact. Like I've separated their hands, or I'm helping contribute food to someone because I can see that they're going to eat now because I've donated that €2. Like it's so simple but so effective.
Exactly. Exactly. My mind's there
Wow.
too. I love it.
But do you know what? I don't think I have been on any episode, or we've had any episode with this amount of examples from Oxfam, obviously, but also other examples from other organisations. It's been absolutely brilliant chatting with you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I definitely want to circle back on the digital wallet because I am super keen to see how that campaign goes, to share the results with our listeners, because I know I'm pretty certain that a lot of them are definitely going to be interested in that. Also, going to be looking up that German organisation and that it's a creative tech campaign. I don't really know what to call it. It's a really interesting, unique blend of
I
creative and
definitely
tech.
think that their marketing and fundraising team worked together on that one, and I give them major kudos. I am also going to give Oxfam Italy fair warning that they're going to see an influx in monthly donors, which we love, so everyone can try out that digital wallet experience.
It's great, and hats off to you and your teams globally, like the teams that have been involved in all of the examples that you've shared today. It's a wonderful nod to the excellent work that Oxfam are doing globally. And yeah, we're thrilled, and we'll be watching on with bated breath to see how these new initiatives are going. But thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast. We really appreciate it. We've loved
Thank you
having
so
you.
much for having me. It's been so fantastic and such an honor.
Oh, and I should just finish off by saying, and I wrote it down, Swag is out, digital validation is in. I am a huge fan, and I promise you I will be borrowing that phrase. So
Of
thank
course,
you.
my pleasure. I'm glad it sticks.